guess y'all must not pray to God up in here. Because you motherfuckers did, y'all would be staring at the devil.
After the chaos they've both endured, Mike and Iris take a boat on a lake, in the hopes that the sway of the water will quiet their troubled thoughts. Following the riot at the Kingstown prison, the inmates are transferred over to the hastily constructed tent city. A leadership vacuum emerges, and gangs both inside and outside the prison begin engaging in bloody battles for supremacy. The police fight back, and during a drug raid at one of the Bunnies' cookhouses, Robert kills a young man who hesitates too long to put his gun down. Mike then gets called in by Detective Ian to a gang-related shootout, and is informed of the drug bust. Soon after, he receives a call from Bunny, who is furious at this betrayal after his prior cooperation, and Mike drives over to placate him. He asks Bunny for a way to put an end to the bloodshed, but Bunny states that with all the old gang leaders dead, the only way for new ones to rise is through violence. After his meeting with Bunny, Mike goes to meet with Ian and the rest in a diner and asks them to go easy on Bunny's gang, as they are the only ones he can negotiate with. However, things go from bad to worse when he is informed by the crew that Milo Sunter isn't part of the prison population, and his dead body hasn't been ID'd. Realizing that Milo may have escaped, Mike rushes off to the coroner's office to see Assistant DA Evelyn Foley. With no sign of Milo among the dead, he tells Evelyn to issue an escaped inmate alert. Meanwhile, interim warden of the Kingstown prison, Kareem, returns to active duty at the prison. Heavily traumatized by the violent physical and sexual assault he and other prison guards endured during the riot, Kareem takes his revenge by brutally beating down 3 of the men who attacked him. Having confirmed his suspicions, Mike rushes over to the boat where he left Iris and brings her back to shore, where agents await to take her into protective custody. Hurt that Mike is sending her away forever so easily, Iris leaves with them. But when she learns of the real reason behind his urgency, she flees from their protection and visits Mike at his office. After confronting him, he admits the truth and tells her about the threat of Milo. With war continuing to rage through the streets of Kingstown, Mike quickly drops Iris off at his brother Kyle's place. He returns to town to find an exceptionally violent drive-by shootout. Tracking a trail of blood, he and Ian find one of the victims bleeding out next to a garbage bin. As his life drains away, he and Mike have a conversation where the young man professes his anger at the state of things. Before passing away, he reveals that the recent fights between the gangs weren't ordered by any leadership and were simply the result of people fighting for power or revenge. With matters at a breaking point, Mike asks Bunny to sit with the other gangs and come to a truce. Bunny tells Mike that the only way this will happen is if the prison guards stop running the prison like a lawless hellhole, and if Mike acts as a mediator to bring them all together for a truce. Though initially hesitant, Mike agrees to mediate and tells Bunny that he has a plan to fix things, but that it will hurt in the short term. After coming to an agreement, Mike leaves and calls Evelyn. He reveals his crazy plan to the ADA, which is to have all of the gang leaders on the outside temporarily arrested and sent to prison, so they can pick new leadership on the inside. Over the next few hours, Mike manages to get all 4 gang leaders and Warden Kareem together and reveals his plan. Police officers arrive to ensure that no one escapes, and Mike gives everyone his word that they will be freed once the town is at peace. Having dealt with the criminal leaders, Mike returns to Kyle's to pick up Iris, but finds her room empty. Meanwhile, Iris walks through town until she arrives at a church. Inside it, she goes down to the basement, where she finds Milo, and tells him that she has nowhere else to go. Acting on a tip, the police raid Bunny's grandmother's place searching for drugs. Mike is livid when he finds out and angrily berates Ian and Stevie for provoking a war and risking Bunny's trust in Mike. Afterwards, Mike goes to the prison to talk to Bunny, but doesn't reveal what went down with his grandmother. He asks Bunny what he needs to settle things, and Bunny asks for a window of opportunity to eliminate some threats and establish order. Mike agrees to make it happen, and the two part ways. While Mike goes around town looking for Iris, she returns to her old line of work under the supervision of Joseph, Milo's right-hand man. Back at the prison, the agreed-upon time arrives and the guards all turn their backs on the inmates, allowing Bunny and the other leaders to carry out their business. Their coordinated attack starts as planned, and soon Bunny himself is assaulted by the leader of the Bloods. Although beaten and bloodied, with the help of his people, Bunny manages to turn the tables and overpower his attackers. That night, Mike goes to the prison and meets the angry and heavily wounded Bunny, who confronts him about keeping the drug raid a secret. Feeling betrayed and spooked by his near-death experience, Bunny tells Mike to get him released soon or his family will be the ones to suffer. The situation goes from bad to worse when Mike learns that the prisoners are slowly being shipped out of Tent City and being dispersed amongst the nearby prisons. This starts worrying Bunny and the other leaders who wonder if Mike is double-crossing them to keep them behind bars permanently. Afraid, Bunny gets hold of a phone and contacts Mike, who assures him that he has their back. Outside, Mike goes to Evelyn to ask for their release papers, but learns that the process has been slowed down thanks to the scrutiny the Department of Justice is paying to Kingstown. The two get into an argument, with Mike increasingly becoming worried that all their hard work might be for nothing. Evelyn tells him that her hands are tied and that he will have to wait patiently for the release papers. Meanwhile, Horace, a construction worker, uncovers a case buried underground at a construction site. He brings it home, where he and his wife open it to find bonds worth millions. With no way to cash them in, Horace goes to a pawn shop and asks the proprietor if he knows someone who can help. Although he is warned that he is treading in dangerous waters, Horace is insistent, and the owner gives him Joseph's name. That night, Horace goes to see Joseph, who immediately recognizes the bonds as Milo's and starts torturing Horace for information before killing him. When Horace fails to return home, his wife is spooked and takes the bonds to the police station, where Stevie recognizes them and calls Mike. The two decide to keep the bonds out of the system, so they can use it as bait to draw out Milo. Sometime later, Mike receives a call from Bunny that there is action down in Tent City, and quickly drives over to find the place empty with all the prisoners having been moved out. The next morning, Joseph and his thugs show up at Horace's house and find his wife. After torturing her as well, they leave her body to be discovered by a police patrol. Realizing that Milo now knows where his bonds are being kept, Mike tells Stevie to take them out of lockup and hide them somewhere until they are ready to spring their trap. Meanwhile, all the gang leaders now transferred back to Kingstown Penitentiary are called into a meeting, where Kareem informs them that until their deal with Mike is honored, they need to follow the prison's rules and behave themselves. The leader of the Mexican gang heatedly announces that he is done waiting on Mike and will now do things his way. Soon after, Mike goes over to the Kingstown prison to meet with Bunny and reassure him that he is close to getting him out. Bunny, however, is unreceptive to Mike's seemingly empty promises and tells him that he will be looking out for himself. However, before he can return to his cell, he is stopped by 3 prison guards, who beat him down and throw him in solitary on behalf of the leader of the Aryan Brotherhood gang. Simultaneously, a coordinated attack is carried out against the leader of the Mexican gang, and he is set on fire inside his cell. The following day, Robert calls Mike and a few others to their usual diner and announces that he is being investigated for the inmates he killed during the Kingstown prison riot. While he initially assumes that the case is being opened because an inmate has testified, Mike tells him that it is more likely that a member of his SWAT team has ratted him out, and tells him to investigate them carefully to find who betrayed him. Mike then brings Kyle with him to the house of one of the guards who attacked Bunny on behalf of the Aryan Brotherhood. He warns the guard to stay away from Bunny, as he is disrupting a delicately maintained balance. The prison guard is initially hostile, but Kyle suddenly attacks him until he agrees to stay away. After pulling some strings, Mike gets Bunny released from solitary and meets with him in hopes of convincing him not to make any rash moves. Frustrated, Bunny tells him that there were things that he needs to do to survive, and that involves pulling some of his own strings. Confused, Mike asks what he means, and Bunny reveals that there was a hit out on Mike that Bunny moved to someone else, saving Mike's life. Despite Mike's insistence, Bunny refuses to reveal who the new target is and walks away. Later that day, while Mike goes to Bunny's neighborhood to check if everything is still peaceful, he receives a call from Bunny, telling him that Mike's path has been cleared. Initially puzzled, Mike soon realizes that the hit he was told about has been carried out. Bunny tells him to get ADA Evelyn to sign his release papers. While in a parking lot, someone guns down DA Lockett, who had been the main obstacle in getting Bunny released. Soon after, Mike goes to the DA's office to visit a distraught Evelyn, who blames Mike for Lockett's death. Mike angrily retorts that Lockett refused to sign the release papers and honor his end of the deal so he could look like a hero to the public. He tells Evelyn to be smart and close this chapter once and for all by signing the release papers. Later that night, Mike, Kyle, and Ian go to a bar to meet up with Robert, who reveals that he found the mole, a man named Ben Morrissey. While the three wonder if they should confront Ben, Mike tells them to steer clear and let him handle it. With the pressure of the internal investigation on Robert, along with his own PTSD over recent events getting to him, Kyle begins passing his nights away from his wife by drinking out late. That night, he ends up at a nightclub where he spots Iris, who sees him as well and quickly disappears. Kyle immediately calls Mike and leaves a message on his phone, notifying him of her location. Despite Kyle's numerous attempts to reach him, Mike's phone, which is tossed in his office drawer, goes unanswered. Mike, meanwhile, starts off his day with a couple of drinks at a bar before walking through town, hopping from bar to liquor store and spending the entire day unwinding from all the pressure. Bunny, on the other hand, finally gains the freedom he'd been so desperate for as his release papers come through. He leaves the prison leadership position to his cousin Raphael and exits the penitentiary where he is greeted by his people. They bring him back home and hold a party to celebrate his freedom. Ian, not content with relying on Mike to deal with Robert's case, decides to take matters into his own hands. He takes a docile but mentally unwell serial killer named Charlie Pickings out from prison under the guise of taking him to a medical facility. He brings Charlie with him to visit Ben Morrissey's house and uses him as a threat to convince Ben to rescind on his testimony. Intimidated, Ben calls the internal investigator to retract his statements, but after finishing the call, angrily insults Ian and Charlie. Being mentally unwell, Charlie snaps and attacks Ben, breaking his neck and killing him. Panicked, Ian knocks things around the house to make the crime scene look like a robbery gone bad and flees with Charlie. While racked with guilt, that night he goes to a bar to meet with Robert and the rest and learns that the investigation has been successfully called off. Meanwhile, Mike spends the night with the wife of one of the security guards who died during the prison riot and leaves the next morning to return to the bar where he first began his booze-soaked journey. On his way, he realizes that he is being followed and quickly heads into the bar to grab his gun, which he had left with the bartender for safekeeping. Back outside, he manages to shoot his assailant, who turns out to be the prison guard that he had warned to stay away from Bunny. Exhausted, he walks to a nearby bench and sits down only to be greeted by Milo, who arrives out of nowhere and tells Mike that he heard he was looking for him. Finally having a chat, the two sit down in a nearby diner, and Milo makes Mike an offer. If Mike brings him his bonds, Milo will hand Iris over and leave town for good. After Mike agrees to the deal, they part ways. In another part of town, Bunny and his gang drive a truck through a gun shop window and rob the place, seemingly arming themselves for war. Mike, finally back in his office, learns of Bunny's release from Kyle, before getting a call from Ian informing him of the robbery. Ian also mentions that Robert's case has been sorted out without confessing his involvement. Afterwards, Mike drives to the DA's office to thank Evelyn for Bunny's release, but an infuriated Evelyn replies that she had nothing to do with it. She explains that it was thanks to another favor that Mike had called in with a for-profit prison owner, and vows to do everything in her power to put Bunny back behind bars. Mike then heads to Bunny's place to have a word, but while Bunny tells him that the two of them are square, he adds that there needs to be a reckoning for the inmates killed during the prison riots. He announces that Robert is now a target, Despite Mike's insistence that he is laying the groundwork for an all-out war, Bunny refuses to budge. That night, Mike receives a call from Iris, setting up a meeting between him and Milo at midnight. While also looking out for Robert, Mike tries to warn him, but is unable to reach the man until it's too late. While walking through the streets, an oblivious Robert is ganged up on and heavily assaulted. Having found the injured Robert, Mike manages to get him to a hospital where he and a legion of cops wait outside his room, praying for him to pull through. As midnight draws near, Mike leaves for his meeting with Milo, but is ambushed by 3 Aryan Brotherhood gang members who try to gun him down. Although he manages to survive the encounter and kill his attackers, he is unable to reach the meeting point in time. Distraught, he instead goes to Bunny's place and declares that a sea of cops is now gunning for revenge, and there is nothing more he can do to help. Bunny replies that he has lived his entire life under siege, and despite their friendship, if Mike stands between him and his freedom, he will not hesitate to put him down. As he leaves Bunny's place, Mike receives a call from his mother, Miriam. He asks her why she's up so late, but the person on the other end turns out to be Milo. Mike anxiously explains his situation and urges Milo not to hurt his mother, telling him that he will arrive with his bonds immediately. On his way, Mike calls Kyle, and he and Ian meet Mike outside his mother's house. Mike goes in to distract Milo, while Kyle and Ian eliminate Milo's men outside. However, their struggle is overheard inside the house, leading to a gunfight. Reacting quickly, Milo takes Iris and escapes, while Miriam is shot by a bullet that Kyle fired. With Milo out of the way for now, the 3 rush Miriam to the hospital, where she is prepped for surgery. Mike leaves a distraught Kyle to wait by her side, while he and Ian head over to the club where Iris worked to search for Milo. They get a hold of his number from Tatiana, another prostitute, and call him. Milo gives Mike one last chance to return his bonds and sets up a new meeting point at a dock. The 2 rush over there with the bonds, with Ian providing cover with a sniper rifle from a distance, while Mike walks into Milo's boat with the currency. Inside, Mike hands over the bag and walks away with Iris. As he leaves, Milo calls Mike egotistical for thinking that he can keep bad things from happening to people, claiming it is a fight he will never win. Afterwards, Milo takes off in his boat, while a couple of his goons walk Mike and Iris away. Suddenly, Milo's boat blows up in a massive explosion, revealing that the bag Mike gave him was rigged with explosives. Reacting quickly, Ian shoots one of the thugs, while Iris picks up a gun and kills the other one. Tired and spent, she and Mike sit on the dock, watching Milo's boat burn on the water. Sometime later, in an unexpected twist, Tatiana receives a call from Milo, telling her that everything went according to plan.
Hawaii has white sand beaches and the allure of the tropics, so they sell that dream. Kingstown has no dream, so it must offer the nightmare. We must sell our failures. Our lure is prison labor and the union wages to extract it. If failure of society could be distilled into one city, this would be the city.